Afternoon, folks, and welcome into the Resene Demystifying Colour webinar today. We're lucky enough to have Zena O'Connor with us again today, beaming in from Sydney as usual. So, hello there, Zena.
Hello, Rob. How are you? Hello, everyone else. Hello.
Now, Zena's presented a previous webinar for us, which focused on colour for wayfinding and orientation in aged and dementia care. If you haven't seen that one, jump onto our website webinar page and have a quick look at it. Before we kick off today, I'll run through a quick bio for Zena. Zena's an independent research consultant who holds a PhD from the University of Sydney, a master's degree in design and a bachelor's degree also. Zena's worked in a wide range of organisations in the commercial, government and academic sectors and delivers evidence-based insight and research reports and seminars relating to colour in applied design and the built environment, colour psychology, colour and logo design and branding, visual literacy and colour mapping studies. Now, should we have time today for questions, please do type them in and we will get to them. So we'll try and fire a few Zena's way at the end of the presentation. And as always, the webinar will be available for viewing again in a couple of days on our website. So please do go looking for it if you want to rewatch. Righto, we'll get straight into it. Over to you, Zena.
Thank you very much, Rob. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is well and staying safe from COVID-19. So yes, today's webinar is Demystifying Colour, making sense of different colour models and systems. So the discussion today will focus on a couple of learning outcomes, and there they are up on the screen. Understanding the relevance of accurate colour identification for design in the built environment, understanding different colour systems, including the RYB model, Pantone PMS, NCS colour models, CMYK, RGB and hex codes, and also distinguishing between key online tools that can identify and colour match. And I'll be making some reference to the colour paint, the Resene Paints online colour tool, which is fantastic. Whoops, sorry. So by way of an introduction, specifying colour in applied design and the built environment involves managing colour so that colour design projects achieve the intended colour aims. In this context, colour models and colour notation systems play an integral role in identifying, translating and communicating colour data, and doing this accurately across different contexts, including graphic and interior design, advertising, branding and design of the built environment. However, multiple sources of information, from evidence-based academic publications through to reliable websites, as well as kind of amateur self-published data, have resulted in an abundance of often confusing ideas about colour models and colour systems. This discussion aims to demystify colour models, especially those commonly found across different areas of applied design and the built environment. Each of these colour models and systems feature different characteristics and were developed for different purposes. So designers and architects often refer to one or more of these colour systems when specifying colour for their projects. The various elements that constitute a design scheme, such as painted surfaces, window and door frames, tiles, wall coverings, and so on, are identified using colour systems such as Pantone or RGB colour codes. More complex projects often involve a greater range of different coloured design elements common to architecture and interior design, such as design elements that might relate to branding or advertising, livery, signage, graphic design, and so on. So here's a larger project that is quite a fascinating project, actually. It was a recent rebranding exercise done here in Sydney for the Benevolent Society of Sydney. And it was the work of Anika Weller of Design Works. She did the logo design, and that featured overlapping letters and multicolours. The overlapping letters, the interwoven letters, which you can see there on the screen. Oh dear, something is happening here. Represent the notion of stronger together. And the multicolours signify diversity and inclusivity, which are key notions for the Benevolent Society. So the rebranding of the Benevolent Society also involved, sorry, my screen is playing up on me. The rebranding of the Benevolent Society involved translating the colour scheme into the interior design of their new fit out here in Sydney. Their new head office needed to feature interior design that reflected their new branding, as well as graphic design and fundraising collateral. So a key issue in projects like this is to ensure that the colours are accurately identified and translated across those different design components. Not an easy task when there are so many different design elements and also different colours. So the first colour model I'll talk about today is RYB colour. And this particular colour model underpinned traditional colour theory, and it continues to feature in colour curriculum in design schools and universities throughout the world. In this context, the RYB colour model relates to the use of red, yellow and blue to create colours, and also to create colour combinations. Plus it underpins a lot of those prescriptive colour relationships that are commonly used in terms of colour strategies in art, design and architecture. It doesn't have the capacity to identify colour, beyond the creation and depiction of colour for applied design and architecture. In the past, what designers like myself and architects and illustrators would do is to create their own coloured imagery using watercolours, gouache paint or similar, as per this illustration on the screen. In creating their coloured imagery, they generally followed the RYB colour model, mixing red, yellow and blue gouache paints or watercolours to create a broader range of colours, to tint or to shade, and to create greens and oranges and so on. However, as I mentioned, the RYB colour model doesn't have the capacity to identify colour, and colour matching was therefore done manually, and it was subject to error in terms of hue, tonal value and saturation levels. So here we have an image featuring the same architect's sketch with some references to Pantone and Hex colours. Unlike other colour models, it doesn't have that sort of structured methodology to identify and communicate colour data. Instead, coloured imagery is created and then compared manually and now digitally with colour notation systems. And these provide colour identification for communicating colour data. The lack of a universal colour notation system prompted the need to develop these colour systems that could interpret colour data from RYB-based coloured imagery and then convert them to things like Pantone and the NCS system. This enabled designers and architects to identify the colours that they intended to use and then accurately specify colour. So the RYB colour model shouldn't be conflated or equated with the CMYK model. They're quite different. They're very separate conceptually, with the latter, the CMYK colour model, evolving in the printing industry and allowing for the creation, application, specification and communication of colour data in graphics and print. These colour modelling illustrations are very, very simplistic. On the left, we've got the RYB model, on the right, the CMYK model. And they don't represent the complexity of RYB colour or CMYK colour. The RYB colour model dates back many centuries and it continues to have much relevance. Prescriptive colour combinations, as well as all of those colour constructs that we know, have evolved from the RYB colour model. And these continue to play an integral role in terms of the numerous applied colour strategies that we're all very, very familiar with. So these strategies include things like analogous colour, contrasting, complementary colour, triadic, tetradic colour schemes, as well as monotone and monochromatic colour. And all of these colour constructs and colour strategies continue to be applied in design and the built environment. So moving from RYB colour to the Pantone PMS system, this is a colour matching system that was developed in the United States and released back in 1963. And it came out of a need to accurately identify and communicate colour information from initial design brief through to the development of coloured imagery through to installation and manufacture. So before computer-assisted design, architects and designers like myself, fashion and graphic designers, advertising illustrators, would all create their own imagery using watercolours, pen and ink, gouache paint, but they had no way of accurately identifying colour or colour data and then cross-checking that with the colour nuances they wanted to use in their design outcomes. So the Pantone colour matching system was the brainchild of Lawrence Herbert, who wanted to create a universal colour language. He noticed how difficult it was for designers and architects and printers to identify and communicate colour. At the time, designers and architects used their coloured illustrations for their projects, but there was no reliable way to communicate colour information. The use of colour names was problematic because the colour impression implied by such colour names varied considerably. So they needed ways to communicate their preferred colour outcomes using some kind of universal colour notation system. And Lawrence Herbert came up with the Pantone PMS system precisely for that reason. So in 1963, Pantone launched their first fan deck, and that featured 500 colours. The fan decks became an important colour matching tool across all areas of applied design, advertising, branding, and the built environment. Separate Pantone systems are now available for graphic design and the print industry sector, and also for fashion, apparel, I'll just flick back, textiles and interior designs. On the left are some of the colour identification tools for graphic design and print, and on the right are just some of the identification tools for apparel, fashion, textiles, and so on. So Pantone matching system continues to be a key tool for specifying colour across different industry sectors on a global scale. Pantone have kept abreast with digital technology and offer a range of portable digital tools for easily identifying colour in any context and in any setting. The Pantone Colour Match card is about the size of a credit card. It's a very handy little gizmo. It's inexpensive, portable, and easy to use. Buy the card, download the app on your phone and follow the instructions on the card, and you can easily identify colour from any location, from imagery, products, walls, construction materials. The Pantone Colour Code Protocol relates to the individual colour code plus name and then the product category. So each colour name, like Pantone 2018 XGC, the XGC relates to the actual product category, while the 2018 relates to the colour code for that particular colour. Every year since 2000, Pantone announces the colour of the year. It's part of what they offer to their clients. This colour is chosen after reviewing colour trends across all areas of design and industry. Pantone's annual colour of the year becomes highly influential and it tends to inform colour choices across fashion, apparel, graphic design, as well as product design and interior design. My apologies there. So the next colour model I'll look at is the CMYK colour model. This emerged in the printing industry in the 19th century. There were some examples before that, but it basically emerged on a widespread basis in the 19th century and became a key system for graphics and print since then. Prior to ink and digital inkjet and digital printing, the printing process involved 4 colours, 4 ink plates, and these were used to print images. These plates are printed cyan, which is the C, whoops, magenta, the M, yellow, the Y, and then black. Black is the K, which is the key colour. And this was always printed last to just visually hold the image together in the event of a registration error. That is, any misalignment of the CMY colour allocations within that image. A huge range of colours can be achieved and printed using CMYK. The origins of CMYK date back to Jacob Leblond, who's credited with inventing the 4-colour mezzotint printing process way back in 1715. His invention led directly to CMYK colour printing and the subtractive approach to colour mixing. To create a coloured mezzo print, Leblond worked from dark to light. That is, a copper plate was roughened all over the plate, roughened evenly across the plate, and if the plate were printed at this point, the print would show as solid black. The image that was to be printed was then created by selectively burnishing areas of the surface of each plate. The smooth parts print lighter than those not smoothed by the burnishing tool. Areas smoothed completely will not hold any ink at all, and such areas will print white, that is the colour of the paper without ink. This was called working from dark to light, or the subtractive method. Leblond applied this method to printing colour using a separate colour plate for each colour, and each colour was printed separately. This segued into the CMYK printing process that we know today. With CMYK, tiny dots of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are overlapped, and these perceptually blend to create the colours that we see in a meaningful way. In this image, a close-up of the image of the eye there reveals the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black dots. And these, when seen from a distance, become perceptually combined to convey the impression of skin and hair colour. Here are some individual CMYK proofs that, when printed, will result in the image of the barn. With CMYK colours, colour printing, when all colours are printed, the result is very dark, murky brown. Black was traditionally used to overcome problems with registration or the misalignment of the CMY colours, and to also blacken dark tonal areas as required to create dark shadows and so on. So here are the individual proofs of a Marvel Comics cover. The top row features the 4 proof test printouts. And then the second row shows the 4 progressive proofs of the same colour. And as you can see in CMYK printing, with each print, the image starts to become more meaningful. So in CMYK printing, yellow is printed first, red is then printed on top of the yellow, then the blue, and finally the black. So CMYK colour coding is still used. It's a very common form of identifying colour, especially in print and graphics. And this follows pretty strict numerical protocols that reflect the proportions of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black in terms of each individual colour. So white, if you were to print white, the CMYK code is 0000. If you were to print, say, magenta, the CMYK code is 010000. If you were to print black, the CMYK code is 000100 for the black. So here are some more examples. This is the Spotify logo, which is green, and the CMYK code is 80080. Very easy code. And there's the Cadbury purple, a hotly contested purple that's covered, like a lot of brand colours, by intellectual property trademarks. And its CMYK code is 90100. So the next colour system I'll look at is the NCS colour system. Like the Pantone system, the NCS colour system is a proprietary system that includes a collection of colour identification collateral, including a colour atlas, educational materials, plus online and digital colour identification tools. The NCS system is based on the colour opponency hypothesis of colour vision, first proposed by Ewell Herring back in 1878. The NCS colour system has been produced and marketed by the Scandinavian Institute since 1975, and it's been informed by extensive research that was conducted by Anders Hard, Lars Civic, and physicist Gunnar Tonquist. The system is based on the phenomenology of human perception, and it's not based on pigment colour. So the NCS system features 6 pairs of elementary colours: white and black, red and green, blue and yellow. And these represent the 3 pairs of colours that relate to the opponent colour theory, that theory of human vision proposed by Ewell Herring. The NCS system includes an extensive range of colour reference materials that are specifically designed for use by architects and designers across all areas of applied design. These enable the accurate identification and communication of colour using the NCS system. So the NCS colour system has become the national standard for colour in Sweden since 1979, Norway since 1984, Spain since 1994, and Africa since 2004. In terms of colour coding protocols, the NCS system currently features around about 1,950 standard colours. In the NCS colour system, colour is described and classified using key properties of hue and nuance. And nuance in this context relates to the whiteness or blackness, as well as the chromaticity, that is the level of colour saturation or intensity. So a colour is identified using a code like S1050Y90R. Oops. The S stands for standard NCS colour. The 1050 stands for the nuance, which is 10% blackness and 50% chromaticness. And the hue code, which is the Y90R, relates to its resemblance to 2 elementary colours. And so in this case, it's a yellow with 90% redness. Moving on to the RGB colour model. This highly simplistic colour models that you see on the screen belie the complexity and accuracy of the colour notation system. This is actually the case for a lot of these very simple models. They belie the accuracy of the colour model that they're supposedly standing for. So the sRGB colour space came about as a result of collaboration between Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard in 1996. The aim was to create a universal standard colour space that could be used across all electronic devices and software programs. The S in sRGB stands for standard. They wanted to have a standard colour space that they could use across these different applications. So the sRGB colour space was initially based on the CIE 1931 XYZ colour space, which was devised by the International Commission on Illumination. The colour space was first defined. The colour space was the first that defined qualitative links between wavelengths of light in the visible spectrum and the colours perceived by human colour vision. The IEC reviewed and standardised the colour space in 1999. There are different size RGB spaces. There are different size RGB colour spaces depending on the software program. So for example, you'll notice in this that there's an Adobe RGB colour space, which is a much larger colour space, and then the standard RGB colour space, which is the smaller space. So the RGB colour space is a device-dependent colour model that features in colour televisions, videos, cameras, image scanners, digital cameras, theatre lighting, computer and mobile phone displays, video projectors, LED displays, and large screens. It can produce up to 16 million, a little more than 16 million colours, as each of the RGB elements can be varied between 0 and 255 to construct colour. So white equates with RGB of 255, 255, 255, and the absence of all of those, which would be RGB 000, produces black. So here is a magnified view of 1 square millimetre of 2 LCD laptop screens, showing RGB sub-pixel structure. And as you'll notice, you'll see there the red, green and blue structure of the RGB system. So varying those RGB elements is how text and imagery is created. Countless variations of colour nuance can be created using RGB values for graphics, print and any other form of design. So you can use the RGB and vary those RGB levels, and this can lead to highly accurate colour specification. Countless nuances of colour can be created by sliding the RGB levels up and down. When RGB levels are low, the colour sample is darker, and when RGB levels are high, the lighter the colour sample. When RGB levels are pegged at the same identical level, variations of grey are achieved. And as I mentioned, white occurs when RGB levels are all at 255 and black when RGB levels are all at 0. The RGB colour system underpins all of those colour dialog boxes that are common in software applications, from Microsoft Word and Excel through to Photoshop and so on. The standard colour dialog box, which you see on the left there, has 256 colours. However, if you flip over to the custom screen, you can see that countless colours can be produced by varying the amount of RGB and also varying the tonal value up and down. So moving on to hex codes. Hex or HTML codes are a way of identifying colour on computer programs and software programs like Adobe and Canva and so on. HTML is short for Hypertext Markup Language. And you'll notice that it features in a lot of colour dialog boxes found online. This is the colour dialog box from Canva, but it's also a similar colour dialog box for Pixel Picker, WordSwag, and so on. So the colour protocols for hex codes involves a 6-digit, 3-byte hexadecimal number. 1 byte represents a number in the range 00 to FF, and there are 3 sets of bytes. Byte 1 is the red value, byte 2 relates to the green value, and byte 3 relates to the blue value. The hex system is a base 16 system, and that enables a large gamut of colours, resulting again in 16 million or more colours. When identifying and communicating colour, hex codes allow for far greater accuracy in colour matching across different platforms and applications. It's a colour code system that I frequently use now. So getting on to colour conversion tools, converting colour from one colour system to another is a common task for designers, architects and specifiers, so that they can accurately identify colour, their colour selections, and communicate that colour data to manufacturers and suppliers of construction materials and design elements. An architect may wish to convey a company's brand colours into colours that feature on a building's facade, for example. And brand colours are often expressed in CMYK colours or RGB colours, or use the Pantone system. And by converting brand colours to RGB colours or hex codes, the architect can specify colour using colour systems that are commonly used by manufacturers of construction materials. Similarly, for interior designers, they're often required to incorporate brand colours into an interior design scheme. This particular project involves using CMYK or Pantone colours to indicate the colours of paint, upholstery, textiles, and even granite and software, like this example from Tiffany. So colour data is converted to RGB and hex codes, and that ensures that brand colours are accurately represented in a colour scheme like this one. So there are a number of ways to convert colour information. Pantone, the Pantone colour tool online, converts colour data from LAB, sRGB, hex and CMYK to the closest Pantone colour. It then can find out the approximate values in Pantone, and it'll tell you exactly what the Pantone colour might be. Another colour conversion tool is provided by Rapid Tables. This tool converts colours from RGB to CMYK, as you see there on the screen, as well as hex codes. Plus it also gives you a colour preview of the colour sample. A very effective tool that I use all the time is the Resene Finder colour tool. This particular colour tool is fantastic. It converts colour quickly and easily, and it converts colour in terms of RGB, CMYK, hex codes, as well as HSL and lab codes. Plus it provides the closest Pantone paint colour. So in conclusion, there are multiple colour models and systems available for designers, architects and specifiers. Each of these colour systems has strengths and weaknesses, but all have been developed for specific purposes and colour application across different sectors, including design, architecture, printing, branding, advertising and manufacturing. Colour identification devices and online colour tools mean that specifying colour is now very, very easy, irrespective of context. So thank you very much. I hope all that shows a bit more, throws a bit more light onto some of those different colour models and systems. Are there any questions or comments?
Thanks, Zena. Yeah, we have actually had a few questions come in, so we'll just roll through a few. It was super interesting, and I'll certainly learn a lot going through that. Now, we've had one come in from Camille Jones that is talking about that Pantone fan deck or colour chart. And is it true that the Pantone colours can vary somewhat in shade when they update their fan decks? I think that's something we've seen ourselves occasionally when a new one's released. The colours do look slightly different at times.
Yes, that can happen, and of course they also create and launch new colours each year. They're launching new colours, and in launching those new colours, it often means that they drop off some of the older colours. So yep, each fan deck tends to be slightly different, and some of the colours do in fact vary slightly. Yes, that's yeah.
Now there was another one came in that just talked about, and I think you've touched on it there, but changing between the color coding systems. Are the colors exact when you change between the systems, or do they vary?
That's a good question. And that is why I always use hex color codes to start with. Hex as well as RGB are amongst, particularly hex, it's a very highly accurate color coding system. However, when you move to some of the other color models, the color gamut is smaller. So hex color gamut is 16 million or so colors, as is RGB, whereas some of the color gamut size of some of the other systems is much smaller. And because it is much smaller, it means that it won't be exactly the same color. However, I find that, say, with converting color from a hex code to using the Resene Finder color system, a system like the Resene Finder color system always provides a range of colors, so that it may not be an exact match, but it's a very close match, but there's also a range of colors that you can choose from.
And just on that Finder color page on our website, that's the area when we get asked in the specifying or technical team to get the closest color to an RGB or something else that we get, and that's the screen that we use. And you're quite right, it gives a nice range, and then we're able to go in and show some options, and usually there's a pretty close option that pops up there. So it is a great tool. So we might we might roll through. It's already, we've had a suggestion or two from internally to actually roll through just quite a specific webinar on navigating through our website to use those tools. So we'll do that for those that are interested at some point as well. Probably be a pre-recorded one. But another question came in from Chris Farley, which was, will paint colors match a Pantone color? Now, this is probably one that I could answer, because we do get this regularly, and it's something that we need to stress, is that the Pantone system uses inks, and when we're tinting paint, it's quite a different system. So we have visual color matches on file, and they're all pretty good. They're fairly close, but when you're dealing with paint versus a Pantone ink system, they are actually different. So it's really important for people to note that there can be a slight difference. And it's actually the same when you're dealing with other products like powder coating as well. We get asked to match powder coating colors. Paint versus powder coating will look quite different just through the rheology of the products. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's an interesting one.
Texture also can complicate that as well, in that a particular color on a smooth surface will tend to look different from the same color on a textured surface. And then of course there's the problem of specified and inherent color, where you might specify a color for a particular building, the building gets a lot of sun, the colour will look a certain way. But if you specify that same colour for a building that gets a lot of shade, for example, the colour will look slightly different. So colour is always open to the influence of so many different elements, like texture, the texture of the surface, as well as ambient lighting and so on.
Yeah, that textures, that's a really good point, because we do strike that a lot with paint coatings and say exteriors of buildings where people feel they've got the wrong color, and it's actually gone onto a textured surface, so it looks a bit darker, and so it's really interesting how even on different elevations or surfaces, walls and ceilings in an interior situation, when you're putting the same color on same product, colors can look quite different based on the lighting that's going on in the environment. So
absolutely.
Another question in from Nick Vandernoel. Not sure I've heard reference to RAL colors. Can you provide a comment on this?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question, and no, I can't. I'm not that familiar with RAL. I tend to stick to color systems that I'm familiar with, so yep, I can't help you with that one.
I can add a little bit on it. That's RAL's. I believe it's a European and like an industrial coating type system, and so we do see them pop up here at times. Often it's for corporate branding projects, and quite often from companies that are European based, and they're dealing with RAL colors on things like steelwork or something like that. We get it pop up quite often in luxury car brands. The RAL colors pop up because that's, say, Audi or Porsche or something like that. They're using those color systems, and then they've got global brand guidelines, and the RAL colors pop up. So again, we have visual color matches to those, and they're all pretty good and close enough that we generally don't have too many issues for projects that are going on out there. So I think that brings us to an end today, Zena. That's been fantastic, and I'm sure that everyone's found it extremely interesting. If there is anyone out there that's after Zena's contact details, I'll make sure they're in the follow-up email that will automated email that'll pop out tomorrow. So, or if you don't grab them there, please do just email me and I'll fire them through. So, thanks again, Zena. That's been fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and stay safe out there. We'll catch you next time.
Stay safe.
Cheers.
Absolutely. Stay safe. Thank you. Bye.